welcome to Run It Back on the Raptors Republic Network. I'm your host, Zulfi Sheikh, joined by Kyle Ramnarine, and boy, do we have a lot to go over. The longest tenured Raptor coming into the season, and franchise icon Pascal Siakam was traded to the Indiana Pacers, so it goes without saying we have a lot to go over. We'll react to the deal, give our thoughts on the team and the outlook going forward, and recap everything in between. So with that being said, let's run it back. All right, now to recap this week's action. You could basically call the past week of Raptors basketball the Exodus Tour as they took on Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, and OG Anunoby and their respective teams. Wow. All right, so the Raptors began the post-Pascal Siakam era on Wednesday with a home matchup against the Miami Heat. It was an emotional day for Toronto for more reasons than one. News broke on Wednesday that Golden State Warriors assistant coach Dejan Milojevic, a member of the NBA family, had tragically passed away. Milojevic had ties to the Raptors. As a Serbian, he was close with head coach Darko Rajakovic and assistant coach Ivo Simovic, but he was also a colleague of assistant coach Jama Malalela while he was in Golden State. Darko, along with much of the team, were saddened by the news of Milojevic passing, who was just 46 years old, and the Raptors held a moment of silence before the game in his honor. Now to the basketball of it all, Toronto dominated pretty much right out the gates, despite missing their leading scorer in Pascal Siakam and still being without the services of starting center Jakob Poeltl. The Raptors just couldn't miss from beyond the arc, drilling 23s on a 53% clip. And keep in mind, this is just one game removed from a 4 of 32 performance from deep against the Celtics. Gary Trent Jr. got the start in place of Siakam, and he had his best game of the year, dropping a season-high 28 points, splashing 8 of his 9 threes in the process. Meanwhile, RJ Barrett and Scotty Barnes added in 26 and 20 points respectively as Toronto cruised to a 121-97 win. Now, post-game, on an emotional day all around, Rajakovic was asked about his message to the team headed into the game and how much his late friend meant to him.
Darko, I can only imagine how challenging today was for you personally and professionally. What did you say to the team before heading out for opening tip-off?
I told my guys that I loved them. And opening play in the game was ATO that Decky, my friend, I learned that play from him, and that's what he brought to NBA. That's what he brought to Golden State. I stole that play from him, and that was our opening play tonight, and we were able to score on that one. So, you know, I dedicated this team win to our team and to Decky.
After picking up a convincing win to kick off the new era, the Raptors remain at home to face the Chicago Bulls on the second night of a back-to-back. Bruce Brown, the main piece to come back in the Siakam trade, arrived to the city just hours before tip-off, and despite not even practicing with the team, came out ready to play. The former champion showed why he's such a sought-after player for any contender, as he logged 25 minutes and notched 15 points on 7 for 10 shooting, grabbed 7 boards, and was a plus 11 on the night. Now, unfortunately for Toronto, his boost off the bench was not enough to make up for yet another cold shooting night from distance. The Raptors shot 10 of 38, and remember, this is just one day after having one of their best shooting performances from deep all season. This team continues to just make little sense sometimes. Now, Scotty Barnes was also awesome as he was 1 point shy of tying his career high in scoring. He finished with a monster 31 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks. He scored 9 of those points in the third as Toronto tried to cut down Chicago's lead, but they couldn't slow down the trio of DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic, and Kobe White, who all finished with over 20 points, as the Bulls won 116-110. Now, after facing X number 1 and X number 2, the Raptors capped off the week by taking on the recently traded away OG Anunoby at Madison Square Garden in New York. Subsequently, that also meant a return to their old stomping ground for RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley. The duo received a thoughtful ovation and tribute from the Knicks faithful prior to tip-off as a thank you for their time. Now to the actual basketball, the Raps did what they could to keep in the game, putting in a solid effort defensively, even forcing 21 turnovers by the Knicks for a total of 29 points. Toronto's pesky defense kept it a 2-point game at halftime, but they simply ran out of gas and got dominated inside. New York finished plus 30 on the glass and scored 14 more points in the paint. Jakob Poeltl, they miss you a lot. Now, the Knicks star duo of Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle led the way as Brunson dropped 38 points, and Randle racked up a triple-double of 18, 16, and 10. OG finished with 14 points and 7 rebounds for a plus 20 in his first game against the Raps, whereas Barrett led Toronto in scoring with 20 points against his former squad, while Quick put up a double-double, 12 points and 11 assists. But the Raps lose handily 126-100. Now, to recap all of that, the Raptors completed their first week without Pascal Siakam with 1 win and 2 losses. They are now 16-27 on the season and still hold on to the 12th spot in the Eastern Conference. Now, Kyle, I guess to start off, we hadn't gotten a chance to talk about the trade when it happened. What were your impressions of the deal, and I guess just the fallout going around it?
I mean, like right off the bat, too. Like I think when emotions were high, everyone was kind of saying, "Yeah, we didn't get enough value for Siakam. Like we didn't use it to his fullest potential." But then, after calming down and seeing what we really did get, I think the Raptors got a good haul. Like 3 first rounders for someone on an expiring contract. Bruce Brown and all the other players. Like for me, I think it was a solid win for the Raptors. They did probably what the best they could do given the scenario too, and that the reports came out that they didn't want to offer Siakam that extension. So again, with what was presented and what was on the table, I think this was solid over all around for the Raptors. We might move around Bruce Brown too, and this is what I was going to ask you too. Like, do you think Bruce Brown is going to get moved sooner than later, or do you think they'll keep him for the long run?
I think if I had to guess, and again, I'm kind of fence sitting here, but it's going to be one of those things where it depends what offer comes through. If the Raptors get a really good deal by a team that it really wants to end up contending, I could personally see like a team out west trying to get a Bruce Brown. Hell, if the Denver Nuggets could get back Bruce Brown, they probably would. They need some depth on that team. There's a couple of teams out east, even Philly. I look at a team like that kind of wants to add some like an extra piece to their team. So if an offer comes, I definitely think the Raptors will probably entertain it and take it. But if I had to guess, I think they're going to be patient with this, just because like they're in like wins and lessons mode, and one of the biggest parts of that is continuity for a team. Like guys like Darko, guys like Scotty Barnes, the core of this team, they need a group of guys to continually work with. A person who's like maybe there, maybe not, and they can't really have him like a constant part of this team, rotations, playing minutes, learning things, like that's disrupting a lot of their flow. So it's one of those things where I think they want to take it slow unless an offer really comes through that wows them, because they have a team option for Bruce Brown. They could literally let this ride out for the rest of the season, like take his team option and then trade him next year while he's still under contract in that sense. So I don't think they need to rush it and make a deal happen. But if something comes their way, I think Masai will obviously entertain it, because Bruce Brown is a great player for a win now team, which after trading away Pascal Siakam, the Raptors just aren't in a position to be.
And so I think Masai did say in the press conference too, like more trades are coming, or like he said, more moves are definitely coming. So I'm curious what to see, like who is on the chopping block right now. I wouldn't know. I can't say for sure who. If this was last week or the week before, I would have told you Gary Trent Jr. But all of a sudden he started playing amazingly. I don't know if we're trying to get another big. I don't know what they're trying to do. Who do you think, when he did say more moves are coming, what do you think these moves could possibly be?
Yeah, I don't really think it has much to do with players, to be quite honest, because like again, it just depends what the market's like and what offers are out there. But like, who is trying to make a robust deal for Gary Trent Jr. right now? Who's about to be a free agent? You know what I mean? And so I think it has to do with those picks and the assets attached with it. So he's like he said, there's they have 3 first round picks in this draft, I'm pretty sure now, and they have a really high second round pick as well in this what many consider a weak draft class. And Masai basically said it at 1.2, and I'm paraphrasing. He doubts they're gonna make all those selections. So he pretty much is saying that like they're gonna probably look to package these picks in some capacity, either to get a player back or to move up in a draft class that may have some better players towards the top. So no, I don't think it's necessarily going to be players being moved, because like they made some of these trades to get aspiring contracts as well, right? Like Gary Trent Jr. is coming off the books. Jordan Noir is coming off the books. Kira Lewis, I'm pretty sure, who they got as well, is coming off the books. So like these aren't guys that are necessarily going to be here long term unless things obviously change a certain way. So I think they're not really looking to take players back unless they are really core pieces, which I don't know. Again, I don't know how much value their current pieces have to make that happen. So I think it's more so about the assets and what those turn into.
And it was something crazy this week too, and for the whole trade and everything. I don't know how you're feeling about it as well, but for me, it's like while it was incredibly sad from Siakam, his Players Tribune post, the video post. I just have like a sort of refreshed feeling about the team now. I'm really excited for the direction, and like as soon as they made that move for Siakam or traded Siakam, it's not full rebuild mode, but we're going somewhere now, and I like the direction this team is headed. We got the young players of RJ quickly and Scotty. What's your whole kind of impressions of where this team is headed now and what the direction is?
Yeah, I find it interesting because now the conversation's turned into like, we know the direction is like kind of in that rebuild sphere, but we don't know exactly where it's at. I've heard the phrase retool used, the phrase rebuild, like they're completely starting over. We've heard patience being said by Masai Ujiri a lot, which we haven't really necessarily heard from him in the past per se. So I think that's where the conversation is kind of at right now. And if I had to say, I think they're more in a retool than a full rebuild, because a rebuild is starting from ground zero, and the Raptors don't need to do that. they have step one done. They have a player, a cornerstone to build around, and that's Scotty Barnes. They've actually taken it a step further by adding two main complementary pieces to build with him in RJ Barrett and Emmanuel quickly. So they just kind of need to work on the fringes and the people around that as these three develop and get older and kind of figure things out. So they've done a lot of the groundwork already for this. I don't necessarily think it's starting from ground zero. And Masai basically said as much when in his press conference, he talked about how they kind of had to make these moves on the fly because of how fast Scotty Barnes has developed. They did not expect Scotty Barnes to turn into this kind of player. And Masai repeatedly said, like, a lot of this is because of the development of Scotty Barnes, because how far along he is, how quickly he's made these leaps. So because of that, they already know they have to be working at a faster pace, which is why they were a bit more aggressive with OG Anunoby, with Pascal Siakam to kind of make things work, because they know this guy's extension is coming up. They have to pay him, and then they have to figure out the rest around the Scotty Barnes. So I don't necessarily think it's a rebuild. It's more of a retool, in my opinion, which is a couple steps ahead, which most Raptors fans should be happy about. We already know Masai and this front office don't really like the tank unless it's very strategic like they did in Tampa, and they want to get back to winning ways. So I think this is a good step in that process, and it's nice to know that they're working towards that. They get to see how they can put things together. Because, like, look at Masai's tenure. He hasn't really had to fully rebuild yet or retool. Like, he hasn't had to start over. He came into a situation with Rudy Gay there. He traded him away and kept Kyle and DeMar. And they somehow ended up being competitive enough that Masai didn't have to tear it all down. So this is really his first, like, reclamation project. And I'm curious to see how it goes. But it's very clear that's where this team is going to be for a bit. It's wins and lessons mode. And I want to ask you now, like, we both talked a lot about Masai and what he said throughout this press conference. Where are you with him and this whole situation? Because, like, he had a lot to say then. He was very candid. He was very, what I felt was genuine and honest for the most part. Do you believe what he's saying, or do you buy it? Or, like, have you lost some faith after the situation, especially with the way some of these trades went down? Where are you at with Masai Ujiri?
Honestly, I think like probably at the beginning near the season, I was losing faith in him because he wasn't making, or it didn't look like he was making any moves. But now I think that faith's fully been restored. Just seeing how vulnerable he was in this press conference and just sharing the stories and being completely open, because I was at 590 and we didn't expect it to go this long. We didn't expect him to talk this long at all. We were expecting him to wrap it up in like half an hour maybe. But the answers he was providing, like one that really opened my eyes was when he said he was in, I forget where exactly,
Kenya.
For the DeRozan thing, right? Like he had to spend 2 hours to gain up the courage to call DeRozan, because it really shows that, yeah, he's doing his job, but it's very painful. These things are like hard to do and they're not easy. We can sit here all day long and be like, trade this player, but one man has to make those decisions and make those calls and kind of uproot people and make those hard decisions. And, just seeing him explain his process and explain his thing, even when people asked him, oh, kind of, do you like regret the Jakob trade for that first round? And he's like, no, we needed a pick. Jakob was we traded a first rounder. We're not going to get rid of him. He's worth a first round pick. Him explaining his thought process behind all of these decisions and just being open and honest with the media. Like, my faith has fully been restored. I believe in what he's doing with this team. It's easy to see that he clearly cares a lot about this team, and he cares so much about this team. So for me, I think the press conference, which is a huge win for Masai and kind of brought a lot of players back on his side, and for fans in general too, just to see that how open he was being and how clear and transparent he was. I don't think it was crocodile tears like I saw some people saying. I don't think he was trying to lie to any of us. I think he really sat up there and said, today I'm going to explain everything. It's very emotional. I just traded a player, one of my biggest successful projects in the NBA to another team, and I want to tell people where we're going now, because this is kind of like this press conference sort of issued in the new era of Toronto. This was kind of like the kickoff to everything. But what do you think of it?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Look, I'm ready to say I'm a Masai Ujiri apologist. Like, I'll go out and say it. Look, like, at the end of the day, he's a man I've trusted for a very long time because of what he was able to do with Toronto. Again, say what you want about Masai Ujiri and this team the last couple of years in the front office and some of the mistakes, quote unquote, they've made. They have ushered in, since 2013, the most successful era of Toronto Raptors basketball. That was everything to do with them and their fingerprints all over it. And obviously the players as well doing a massive part in it as well. But like you said, Masai Ujiri came out and was very vulnerable. One of the biggest criticisms of this Pascal Siakam deal wasn't just the return itself. Because like you said, based on what was probably out there at this current time, under the current circumstances, they probably got the best deal. But a lot of what the conversation was, why wasn't this trade made sooner? because like in fairness, you kind of saw the writing on the wall. You knew the situation was going to come to a point like this. They weren't going to extend Pascal Siakam. Whether you like Pascal Siakam as a player or not, paying him 40 to 50 million probably didn't make a ton of sense for this team when you want to build around Scotty Barnes in the future. So you saw that was coming. So why didn't you trade Pascal Siakam last season? Same with Fred VanVleet. You knew you weren't going to pay him what he was probably worth in the open market. Granted, you probably didn't expect Houston to shell out that much money, but why didn't you trade him sooner at the last deadline and instead kind of circle things back and bring in Jakob Poeltl? And like you said, and like Masai explained, he wanted to give this team a chance. He thought that team was competitive enough that they deserved a chance. And one thing I think he said that was like kind of lost in this is at one point, and again, I'm paraphrasing, he said something along the lines of like they asked for a center, like they asked for a big man inside. So like if your players, if I can assume here, wanted you to kind of get a piece for you and be competitive, like wouldn't the right thing to be like say like, yeah, I'm gonna do that for you, I'm gonna trust you guys and I'm gonna buy in with you. Like if his players are kind of selling him on this idea that yes, we can do this, yes, we can make this happen, and who knows how things turn out. He has the example of the Rudy Gay trade. He traded away Rudy Gay. He was going to ship out Kyle Lowry, but then him and DeMar get this core going with some new pieces, and they start winning games. And then you saw what it turned into. That was the beginning of the We the North era. It was that team that went to the playoffs against Brooklyn. So like he has that sample. So why wouldn't he believe that if these guys are so adamant about it and so passionate that he shouldn't give them a chance? I respected it. Like at the end of the day, it was probably the wrong decision in hindsight, but in the moment, like you said, it's an emotional decision. He trusts these guys. He helped bring up a lot of these guys. So I'm okay with it. I'd rather have a leader that trusts his team and he's willing to kind of bet, like to take a phrase from Fred VanVleet, to bet on themselves a little bit, than him just being completely cold the entire time and saying like, no, you got to go. I'm done with it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to build a culture that way, in my opinion. So I'm okay with the way Masai Ujiri handled it. Yes, some mistakes were made in hindsight, but that's part of basketball. That's part of making these tough decisions, and that's part of trying to deal with the emotions of it all. So I'm okay with this, and I'm okay with how it went down at the end of the day, because like at this point, what's the point of dwelling on it? Like going back and arguing about should the Masai have done this, should Jakob have not been traded here? It's not going to change the fact that the guy's here. They have 3 first-round picks now, and Pascal Siakam's gone. That's just not going to change anymore. So I kind of want to look towards the future. But I guess the question I have coming off that, you kind of mentioned too, is like, do you think this officially means like the We the North era is over? Is it time for them to kind of start completely fresh, like branding everything? Like next season is the 30th anniversary of the Toronto Raptors. Some people are saying that like, hey, they kind of need this reset. They need to do something different. Where are you with that? Do you want to hold on to the We the North era because of like the legacy of it, or do you think they just have to go full reset?
I think they should go full reset, honestly, not because I like that's a bad era or anything. Just because I feel like this is a whole new era of Raptors basketball. You know, Siakam's gone, DeRozan's gone, Lowry's gone. All the guys we knew in that era are most likely gone. I think I saw a tweet too where like, except for Jakob, there is no one on this team anymore with ties to DeRozan from like a team. So it's a whole new. It's a whole new era of Raptors basketball. I think next season you either bring back the purple jerseys to kind of pay homage, but I don't know what the slogan would be. I can't come up with it at the top of my head, but find a new slogan to kind of get everyone behind the team. You know, issue in fully. Kind of when you do this rebrand, you're stating that you are in a new era, you're building towards something, and kind of generate something, a new generation of Raptors basketball. I would like to see that too. I think it's going to look very refreshing. You know, it's going to be a whole new era, and I think it's going to get a lot of fans excited for the future.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. Like I've heard like some people have started saying Toronto Forever is a nice like slogan for it, because obviously that's what Pascal Siakam said that would be. And it's been very popular. I think it'd be a bit tough because the Raptors are very like passionate about the fact that they're not just Toronto's team, they're Canada's team. So they want to be all encompassing, which is why We the North works so well. So I'm interested to see like what they would go in that regard. But I'm with you in the sense that like I want it to be a reset, not because we want to forget or like move on from the We the North era. I think in many ways it's a way of paying respect to what those guys built. That legacy is Kyle, it's DeMar, it's Pascal Siakam, it's Fred VanVleet. Those are the guys who ushered in that era. Those are the guys who built it and brought it to its mountaintops when they won a championship. And like Scotty Barnes came in after the championship. They came in after all that peak, and like they were on the downswing, to be quite honest. So like I think like those guys as well, like Scotty, Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, they probably want to build their own thing. They want their own legacy. They want to build their own era of Toronto Raptors basketball and define it with what they did. They don't want to be living off like the scraps of what the previous era and generation was in some regards. So like I want the We the North era to be remembered, but I want to be remembered and respected for the players that kind of made it happen. So I wanted to stay with them, let them hold on to that legacy, and then move on to a new path that these guys can build themselves. So I'm with you in that regard, that I think that's the way it should go, and I hope for that is what they do. it makes sense that with the 30th anniversary coming, it's a good time to kind of pivot and change things up. So I think it works out all around. But I think the last thing I wanted to talk about with you, Kyle, is just the fact that obviously Pascal Siakam is now gone. One of the longest tenured Raptors. He's a franchise icon. He's pretty much top 5 in just about every statistical category for the Raptors. And I want to ask you, I guess, like, what is your lasting impression or legacy of Pascal Siakam, both as a player, as a person? Like, where do you leave with like the whole Pascal Siakam situation?
I think for me, it's like he was just like a quintessential, like he just bled Raptors in a way, you know. He was a Raptor through and through. He was drafted by us. He won in the G League. He won here. He didn't want to go anywhere else. He worked tremendously hard to get where he was, and you know, he didn't ask for a trade. Wasn't in controversies. He didn't give us any issues. So I think my like, not even just a memory, it's just seeing him go from getting drafted to the G League to being our star player, and then with his Players Tribune article, like if he didn't have me crying enough, like reading that article and just him saying Toronto forever, you know, like, because we just being Toronto, we already have a chip on our shoulder because we don't feel like we get enough respect from the rest of the NBA being Canada's team, and just seeing him embody it's I'll always be Toronto, you know, no matter what, like I'll always be a Raptor in my heart. I just love to see it, and it's so sad to see him go, but like overall, I would just, when I remember Siakam, I'm just gonna think literally a Raptor. He was what we want Raptors to be, and he could be up there with the top 3 being one of the Raptors.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And there's just so many thoughts that come to mind when we think of Pascal Siakam. Obviously, like you said, 27th overall pick. He was just this scrawny kid that was decent defensively. He came in with Jakob Poeltl, and they became best friends immediately. Like, he even mentioned in his Players Tribune article that Jakob taught him how to shotgun a beer.
Yeah.
And just like to go from that to then build himself into one of the best players in the league, a top like max value type of player, and just like the type of person he was obviously very, very important in all of this too. Like, he was a great basketball player. You saw the shot he made in the finals over Draymond Green to kind of seal it and everything like that. But one of the things that I think that was been really highlighted, and I'm glad it was, is the fact that he was just such a caring person for the city and his community. Even though he's in Indiana, he's deciding to keep his foundations, headquarters in Toronto. And as somebody who worked at the arena and saw him there a lot of the times warming up, one of the most important things that I saw that he did is that every time he would finish his warm-ups and would head back to locker room, he'd always stop right before the tunnel, see a bunch of fans there. He'd, like, 9 times out of 10, he's signing autographs, he's taking pictures, he's stopping. Like, that is part of his daily routine at Scotiabank Arena. He always made a time for the city and for his people, and that's what made him so special. That's why I personally see him in the Kyle and the DeMar kind of like I guess like lineage of Raptors players, because he loved this city back like the city loved him. And I tweeted that out as well. Like, there have been players before Kyle and DeMar that, like, for one reason or another, kind of broke up with the city. You saw how things ended up with Vince Carter. Chris Bosh left for Miami, and that's how Toronto felt. We felt like the girlfriend that kept getting dumped, and it sucked. And then DeMar, was the first one to kind of say, like, no, I'm here to stay. I want to be with you, and I want to build with you. When he tweeted, "I got us," after Chris Bosh left, that was the first time the city got to feel like, in a basketball sense, like we have somebody who believes in us.
Yeah.
And then Kyle obviously came in and did what he did. And then Pascal was a part of that. Pascal got to see what DeMar and Kyle did, and they got him to believe that this city is worth it and deserves it. And then Pascal Siakam came every day and showed that he grew up here. He turned into a man in this city. And like you said, like, this city just got to see him love us like we loved him. And it was just so powerful overall. I'm honestly convinced that, like, after Kyle, Vince Carter, and DeMar DeRozan, like, Pascal Siakam's jersey needs to be up in the rafters at Scotiabank Arena. He deserves it. Like, let us know in the comments below. Do you think Pascal Siakam's jersey gets retired? Do you think it should be sooner? Do you think it should be after some of those other guys? Let us know where you think Pascal Siakam falls. And let us know some of your favorite memories. Reminisce a little bit. Like, there's been a lot of Pascal Siakam moments throughout his time as a Raptor. So let us know what you think. But I think that was a nice way to tie up our conversation here, recapping everything from this trade and what comes of it. I think now it's time we move on to the power rankings.
All right, so this week for the power rankings, just quick reminder too, these are week to week, so don't be slapping me up when you see Jakob Poeltl so low. Just gonna go ahead with it. Number 1, Scotty Barnes. Number 2, RJ Barrett. 3, Emmanuel Quickley. 4, Gary Trent Jr. 5, Bruce Brown. 6, Dennis Schroeder. 7, Jonte Porter. 8, Thad Young. 9, Chris Boucher. 10, Grady Dick. 11, Jordan Nwora. 12, Jalen McDaniel. 13, Jakob Poeltl. 14, Garrett Temple, and 15, Otto Porter Jr. All right, so Zulfi, what you got for me? What you got for me?
Yeah, I think obviously no Pascal Siakam on this list changes things quite
Yeah,
a bit. A lot of the change, I guess, like makes sense for the most part. I think the one thing that stands out to me is you immediately have Bruce Brown at 5 above a guy
mhm,
like Dennis Schroeder, and I know Schroeder had a brutal game against the
yeah.
Knicks, but I'm kind of curious what your thinking was there and putting Bruce Brown so high up right away.
I was just thinking, like, when he came in and provided that 15 immediately, like he provided a nice impact to the team. I think it was against the Bulls, right? Yeah, so
Yeah.
he was plus 11. He had 7 rebounds, and 1 assist, 1 steal, and then the next game too, like he only had 8 points, but then two, like he with this week, because we're just comparing weeks in general too, like Shooter was not doing much this week. I don't know what it was. Like some games he had 2 points, some games he had five. It could have been easily an off week for Shooter. Like he did have his assists here and there, but I think just when you're comparing the two, just for this week at least, Bruce Brown did have a bigger impact within the games itself. But I feel like if Dennis goes back to his usual type of playing, then I could move Bruce down a little bit. But just for this week, that's where I have it at.
Yeah, I think you said it. Like, if Dennis can get back to his usual play, and I
Hmm.
think kind of like he deserves a bit more credit in this situation. He's been asked to change things a
Yeah,
lot,
yeah.
given the situation. Like, he was starting, then he went to the bench, and he had to acclimate to that, and then now he has to acclimate with different bench players. A guy like that he was working well with on the bench, Gary Trent Jr., is now in the starting lineup for a little bit. And then when Jakob comes back in, that's going to change. Who knows what's going to happen with Bruce Brown? Like, I feel like a guy like Dennis Schroeder, who's a bit of a floor general, like thrives off continuity. So he's been put in a tough situation for the most
Hmm.
part, and he's doing all right. But I'm not totally surprised to see him struggle. And speaking of Gary Trent Jr., who kind of bumped up into that starting lineup for a bit, what do you think of him? Like, he's been playing relatively well for the most part. Again,
Yeah.
he had that really good game against the Heat where he had like
Mhm.
28 points, hit 8 triples. Obviously, I don't think that's sustainable, but like, what do you think his role is now for a team that probably like is not going to be super competitive? Will try different things, kind of getting closer toward the trade deadline and stuff. Do you think he can sustain this kind of play?
I think now probably he can. Like if they're gonna, it depends where they're sliding him in. Like I think when he plays with the starters, he's playing his absolute best. We've seen it right there. There is a sample size of there. But when he goes to the bench, I don't know what it is. I don't know if he can't get a rhythm going. I don't know if the guys aren't setting him up properly. I don't know if he doesn't want to be that creator off the bench and he just wants to be the guy in the starting lineup, get him to his spot and he'll create what he needs to do. So I feel like he will thrive if they do keep him kind of in that starting lineup scenario. I feel like that's where he plays the best going forward. And that's why I moved him up this week because he gave us 26 points. He gave us like a good amount of points that I was asking for last week. Like as long as you can give us like 10 to 15 points, you're doing your job. You hit a couple of threes for us. You play your solid defense that we know you can do. That's all we're asking of you. And he continued to do it this week. He continues to thrive. So I think with Siakam gone too, his role kind of opens up a little bit more because we're going to need good play from him as well. Maybe there is less pressure on there because he's playing with the starters now. He doesn't need to execute more off the bench. But I feel like if we really want him to thrive, keep him coming with the starters at least for now, and then maybe you can try to tinker with the lineup. But I feel like we've seen what he can do off the bench. It's not the greatest, so keep him playing with the starters.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm just curious because like I don't know like if they're going to do that once Jakob Pertl
Mhm.
returns, right?
Yeah.
Like what's going to be the change? Is Jakob just going to slot in for Jonte, and is Gary going to stay in that starting lineup? Is a guy like Jonte going to stay out there? Because we can talk about him too. Like he has been awesome, especially
Yeah.
defensively. Again, offensively, he's still figuring it out. And I know eventually that excuse is going to wear thin. That shot, he's taking it confidently. Some games it's hitting, some games it's not. You really do want to see it start going down more consistently at this
Mhm.
level. But again, defensively, he just does everything right. He moves his hands, he moves his feet. He's so active on that end. So like the fact that he can shoot and have some gravity, I could see him staying out there with Jakob Pertl, kind of alleviating some space because he will pull
Mhm.
defenders out, make it easier for Scotty Barnes, make it easier for Jakob and a guy like Emmanuel quickly to run through the lane. RJ Bale, likes playing downhill, and I just think that it could be a fun combination to have out there with those two guys. But I also see again the benefit of Gary Trent Jr. playing with the starters because he plays better. But like at a certain point too, I'm curious like how much value does a guy have if he can only play well if he's in the starting lineup?
Yeah. Yeah. That is true.
And like because like he's a guy who like unless he starts playing really like a lot better consistently, he doesn't really have the cachet to be in the starting lineup all the time. So he's a guy who's gonna have to go up and down. And if you just can't rely on him on the bench, especially for a team that like doesn't they're not gonna have we're not gonna have a very like strong bench for a majority of the season. Like you could use a guy like Gary Trent Jr. out there. So it's curious to see what that situation is going to be like. And like, it's so hard to evaluate all this now because again, like the Raptors are in wins and lessons mode. Like if their
Hmm.
bench is like not doing so great, I don't know how much the Raptors themselves are really worried about that either. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's very interesting to try to evaluate this all. So I guess like the next player I do want to touch on is Grady Dick because he's
Hmm.
a guy who I think has had a very interesting opportunity come out of all of this. And you were finally willing to bump him up a little bit. Clearly, you saw something from him this week as well. What did you see?
I saw those. I think it was. Let me just make sure and double check here. It was 11 points, I believe, he gave to the team too. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was 11 points, and that was against the New York Knicks. He hit a few shots. He was playing like 3 for 6 from the three. That's what we love to see here
Yeah.
too.
He should have
So
technically been sorry, not to cut you off. He should have been
no
four
worries.
for seven because he hit one shot that his foot was on the line. So that was
Yeah.
basically a 3-point attempt, two in the corner. So he basically went like 4 of 7 from three. Just the last one got called as a two, unfortunately.
And like seeing that too, it looks like his time at the 905 has been working too to kind of get that shot back, give him his confidence back too. And like he's still low on the board at least too, but I had to move him above a guy like Jalen McDaniel and Jakob because again, Jakob's injured. Jalen McDaniel hasn't really been doing anything for the team, and just that performance too, it kind of gives me hope that like Grady can contribute to this team if he keeps going with this too. He gets his shot under him, he could be something truly deadly for this team, and I really do believe it too. Like if he puts on some more weight as well too, that's a whole conversation later, but that performance in itself gives us a glimpse what Grady can really do, even if it's just off the bench too, providing a spark off the bench and not playing with the starters. But for me, I was impressed because he's still a rookie, he's still getting his feet under him, and that performance alone just was like, okay, this is what he can do.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about Grady Dick, so I'm going to try not to give it all away because I'm working on a really fun piece surrounding Grady Dick. But
Mhm.
the main things I want to take out of this next stretch of the season is like this guy deserves an opportunity
Mhm.
to play either like I don't care if it's the NBA team or the 905, just don't have him sitting on the bench. I think that's
Yeah.
wasting his ability to kind of grow. So like if he's up with the Raptors and they haven't assigned him to 905, he should be up there to play. I don't care if it's like spot minutes. I don't care what. He needs to be getting out there at game speed to be able to develop. And I think that's super important for him. And if he's not, like just send him down to 905 so he can
Mhm.
keep getting his reps there because clearly he's a guy who needs to slowly build these reps, get these baby steps in, and you're seeing it pay off. I talked to him after that Miami Heat game, and he said like his conversations with Darko are all about just developing every part of his game. It's not about the jump shot specifically. I know that's starting to come around. We saw it against the Knicks, and it looks good. The confidence is getting there. For him, it was just honestly one of those things where he had to just adjust to the NBA range, I think, more than anything, and get that confidence. So I'm not too worried about the shot either. And Darko has basically said to him like, don't worry about how many points you're putting up. Don't worry about the scoring. Go out there, make winning plays, and contribute. And you saw it against the Heat. His shot wasn't necessarily falling, but he had 4 assists in that game. He was dishing the ball out. He had a great pass in transition where he did a little 360 spin against the Miami Heat too. And then he got on against the Knicks, and he was a confident shooter in the situation. So he's not just trying to be a shooter in this league. He's trying to work on anything. He wants to be a winning player. One of the interesting thing I talked to him about as well is that I asked him about like what was his relationship with like Pascal Siakam. What did you learn from a guy like that? And he said like I spent a lot of my time actually watching Pascal Siakam film with the assistant coaches. And one of the things I'm trying to pick up from a guy like that is his transition ability, how to get through the lane, move around. So like again, just reiterating the fact that this guy isn't worried about his jump shot, and neither is the organization. That's going to come around. That's going to happen. But he's trying to get as much of the rest of his game up to speed. And I know I've mentioned this in the past, like raising that floor of his game. And he's clearly put in an effort towards that. So I think he's gotten to a point where he's showing he can be out there and make positive plays when his jumper isn't falling. And he deserves the opportunity to do that. So I really, really hope the Raptors throughout this next stretch, because again, we don't think they're going to be playing competitive basketball. They just keep putting him out there at game speed. And if they're not putting him out there at the NBA level, they really need to be putting him out there at the G League level just so he can keep playing games. I don't think just doing it in practice is going to be enough for him. I want to see him doing it at a game environment as much as possible. So hopefully you can see more of that. Clearly he's making it pay off so far. So I think he's trending in the right direction. But I think that pretty much does it for me in terms of players I wanted to talk about and ask about with the power rankings. Again, it's so hard to kind of judge all of this right now because of where the team's at and all these guys jumping in. Is there anything else you wanted to mention, or you think you're good with that?
I think we go with that too. Like again, this team is gonna be moving around a lot too. We don't know. Again, we don't know for certain what Bruce Brown's future with the team is too. So that could change. Some players could get moved. So again, like right now, it was so hard to judge again around like Bruce Brown, Dennis Schroeder, Jonte, all those guys because they're coming in and out. Some people are changing their role. Some people are playing with the starters, going to the bench, going to the starter, going to the bench. So it's kind of hard to kind of factor all that in and who's playing better than who. But right now, I just say like it's like you said, we're very in a kind of like wins and losses mode, just learning from our mistakes. So again, this could be a very different list next week, but yeah, just like I'm very happy with how the list turned out and what the Raptors have been doing.
Yeah, I think we kind of bit off a bit more than we can chew with this Raptors team when it comes to the power rankings. It's gonna be funny because in the coming weeks, if they stay in this like mode where they're kind of not winning as many games, they're probably gonna be moving guys out of the end of the lineup. You're gonna have G League guys maybe getting a stint again. Jordan Noir is there. What's he gonna do? Kyra Lewis Jr. was just recalled to the Raptors at the time of this recording. So is he going to get a stint with them? Is he going to be sent back down? There's other guys on the 905. Again, Justice Winslow, former NBA player. He's been playing really well at the 905, especially defensively. And God knows this Raptors defense kind of leaves a bit to be desired right now. And they need a bit of wing / big depth. So maybe he gets an opportunity. So this power ranking is going to be really hard. And really, we're going to have to remind everybody every week that this is fluid. It's going to go week to week
by week.
Yeah, there's going to be names popping in, popping out, but that's just the nature of the beast. And like we haven't even mentioned it up to this point, but Christian Koloko was waived to make way for the salary and for the roster spot for this trade to happen. So he's a guy who's no longer going to be on this list, unfortunately. And I'm sure we both agree in the sense that like all we hope for Christian Koloko is that he gets healthy and takes care of himself and hopefully has another tenure back in the NBA. But yeah, like that's a guy who's no longer going to be on these power rankings as well. So this is going to be changing a lot, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. But I think that pretty much wraps it up for the power rankings. I think it's time for us to move on to betting ahead now.
All right, now let's take a look at the week ahead and preview what's next. And so, welcome back to Betting Ahead powered by FanDuel. This is where we look ahead against with the schedule and everything coming up the last week and my 10K 10-week challenge. So, last week the Raptors had the Heat, the Bulls, and the Knicks. And I made my prediction and I said the Raptors will go 3-0 last week and finally earn that pizza party. So, I told you take the Raptors money line for that entire week. Anyways, how did that go? Well, the Raptors did end up beating the Heat, but did go on to lose the rest of the week, sadly. When will they earn that pizza party? We don't know. Restaurant owners are crying right now in Toronto. Anyways, how is this week looking for the Raptors? They got the Grizzlies, the Clippers, and the Hawks. And so with an injury-riddled team, I think Toronto should make quick work of Memphis. The Clippers have been rolling lately, so I don't think the Raptors will have enough firepower to kind of get over Kawhi, PG, and Harden. The Hawks have been a solid team this year, but I think with the Raptors' newest additions and the whole starting lineup tweaks and everything, they should easily overpower the Hawks. So I would say take the money line for the Raptors on Memphis and the Hawks, and you could take the Clippers money line if you want to bet on that side. So anyways, let's get to our Raptors 10K 10-week challenge. So last week I said to do these legs against the Knicks. I said quickly 15 plus points, quickly 2+3s, Scotty 15 plus points. Other legs I would consider was Siakam 20 plus points and Scotty over 1.5 3-pointers. Anyways, did we win last week? You bet we didn't. Everything that went wrong could have went wrong. Quickly only scored 12, Scotty only scored 9, and Siakam wasn't even on the team. Anyways, a new week means a new 10K 10-week challenge. This week, I'll choose the Raptors against the Hawks. Kawhi and PG could easily cause defensive problems for Scotty and RJ. Like last time they matched up and I predicted it, they had a hard time scoring. So I feel like the Memphis game could also be a blowout and get our starters benched early and have ruined our whole parlay. So I would choose the Hawks game just to be safe. And the legs I would do is Scotty 15 plus points, RJ 15 plus points, Scotty 4 plus assists, and other legs you could consider are quickly over 1.5 threes, RJ 4 plus rebounds. Hopefully we get this W, and that's all we have it for this week for Betting Ahead powered by FanDuel.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Now that does it for us. We want to thank everyone who followed along, and hopefully you're caught up on all things Raptors. If you liked our content and want more and more exclusive stuff, check out raptorsrepublic.com, and feel free to sign up for a subscription. It's $6 a month. You get, again, our work from other contributors, and some exclusive stuff. Shout out to our pick and roll nerds out there. There's a lot of stuff for you this week. So please like, share, subscribe, leave us feedback. I know this is a very changing time for the Raptors, and it's also a changing time for us. What do you want to hear from us when it comes to Raptors? What do you want to hear from us when it comes to recapping this team? Again, if it's one of those cases where they're not winning as much anymore, is there other stuff you'd like us to talk about? I know we have This Week in Raptors History. That should be making a return soon. We'll be trying to toss that back in. So let us know what you think. Let us know what you're interested in seeing and hearing from us. But that pretty much does it for us. I'm your host, Zulfi Sheikh, joined as always by Kyle Ramnarine on the Raptors Republic Network. But until next week, we'll see you in a bit where we run it back.